All right, so I'm training some new SEO writers for our agency, and I put together this pretty much, it's about 4,000 words. I think it's like 3,600 word document. Pretty much this is the SOP I'm giving our writers to essentially help them train, become a better SEO writer, really accelerate the learning process, help them work out some kinks, things like that. So whether you're in high school or college and you want to get into SEO, you're going to need to break some academic writing habits, right? If you've done, ad copy or, long form sales or any direct response copywriting, again, there's some notes in here for you as well. Pretty much the goal is to take you though from little to no experience to, experienced SEO content writer in the span of, a couple weeks to, 4 to 6 weeks would be great. Longest I imagine is probably in the range of like 2 to 3, maybe 4 months. Okay. So anyway, it's about a 3,500, 4,000 word document. It's got everything, where to start learning, what to expect when you start writing, redacted the content examples. Those are obviously just exclusive to our writers and our clients. Tools you'll use to help accelerate the process and really help you become a better writer faster. The writing process we use at a high level, then obviously, at a more granular level. All right. So, like I said, this is a slightly moderated version of the process we're using to train writers. Just pretty much some redacted content and a couple of notes here and there, just kind of for the process, right? So if you've never written SEO content, don't worry about it. But this is primarily for blog content writing. So aiming towards middle, top of funnel type content. And it's primarily centered around e-commerce brands, though many of the topics and principles can be applied to, SaaS, local business, Fortune 5, personal brands, things like that, right? So anyway, before we start, if you have never written SEO content, you're brand new to SEO, whatever the case may be. Maybe you know a little bit, maybe you don't know anything. This is where I would start. I'm a self-taught SEO. I spent about, probably 6 to 12 months just reading blogs before I ever did anything. And that's probably my biggest regret in my SEO career. You need to read a handful of things and then you need to start testing, breaking, trying new things out. Like you reading theory and you're just delaying the process, right? So the more theory you read, yes, you may feel smarter, but if you're not actually doing anything or writing anything, you're not going to get better, okay? So with that being said, of the 6 to 12 months of learning I spent both at an agency and on my own, these are the 4 resources I would absolutely recommend you read if you're going to start SEO content writing in any form, okay? Beginner's Guide to SEO by Moz, 3 chapters, Chapter 1, Chapter 3, and Chapter 4. SEO 101, very basic stuff, right? It's just going to give you a high-level look of like what SEO is, why it's important, how all the pieces kind of work together. Keyword research, again, this is going to inform, how you write content and how you, build keywords into, your meta titles, your page titles, your headings, naturally throughout the content, things like that. And then on-site optimization, obviously as well, is going to be a little bit more applied strictly to the content writing aspect, okay? And this 4th one is actually not from Moz. It's SEO Copywriting Guide by Backlinko. Single-handedly, I think, the best free resource available on the internet for SEO copywriting. Backlinko was run by Brian Dean. It was recently acquired by SEMrush, I think, probably early this year or late last year. It's a good read, and I think he updates it. I think this piece is updated yearly. It is hands down, like I said, it's the best resource for SEO content writing. So if you already know SEO pretty well and you're looking to just make some tweaks on your writing, that's where I'd start, the Backlinko guide. If you're brand new to SEO, you've got a little bit more to learn. Start on the Moz guide, then get to the Backlinko stuff, okay? All in all, that should take you maybe an hour to read through all that stuff. I don't remember off the top of my head how long the Moz course is, but there's a lot of good information in there. You don't need to memorize every single thing in there. You don't need to take notes on all of it. Just read it, understand it at a high level, reference it back when you need to as you start writing. But again, you don't need to memorize it just to start writing. Just read through it, take a brief glance at it, whatever, and then go from there. The biggest takeaway from all of it is Google wants to rank content that is helpful, accurate, easy to understand, and trustworthy, right? There is no secret hack to get into the number 1 spot. If you're watching this video and at minute 10, you're hoping I reveal some secret hack to rank your blog in number 1 spot, you're going to be very disappointed. You won't find it, okay? You need to provide valuable content and you need to provide it at scale, okay? Obviously, there's a bunch of other parts that go into it, but in terms of content exclusive, it needs to be valuable, trustworthy, helpful, easy to read, all that good stuff, right? Everything that every SEO blog has probably ever told you, ever. Now, with that being said, there are some things you definitely don't need to think about. Keyword density, if you're writing naturally, especially if you're very knowledgeable or well-informed about a certain topic, keyword density is not a metric that really matters. In super competitive keywords or in certain competitive niches as a whole, yes, it may play a role. But those are super high level tweaks you'll be making way later on in your writing process and not something you need to concern yourself with right now. Like I said, if you're knowledgeable about it, you're going to be referencing it naturally throughout the content without having to think about, okay, did I mention it 6 times? Did I mention it 7 times? Should it be more? Should it be less? Okay. So my recommendation honestly would be to ignore keyword density. Obviously after you finish your first draft, you'll go back and read it. And if you read it and you're like, wow, I mentioned the target keyword way too much or not enough times, like then obviously go make some changes, okay? But naturally, you should just be mentioning it, as you write, okay? Big picture takeaways from those learning resources and before you start writing. Great SEO content is easy to read and understand even for complex topics, okay? You'll see later on, I think I've got a note down here, the average American reads at like a 6th, 7th, or 8th grade level, okay? So if you're writing about cryptocurrency, I know adults who don't understand cryptocurrency, so if you can't translate it down to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade type reading content, it's not going to matter, right? You're never going to rank if you cannot translate a complex topic down to a simple form, okay? Because essentially, if you don't know it that well to translate it simply, you're not knowledgeable on it, and Google will not trust you. It's simple as that. Second thing, optimize for readability. You should use H2s, H3s, and H4s as much as you possibly can, okay? You want to use white space, you want to use bullet points. Rule of thumb for bullet points, you should never have less than 3. And really just like break up the content so it's easy to skim. Like if people are going to search for something, right, and they're going to land on a blog, they don't probably need to read the whole blog. They just need to find the section they're looking for that's going to satisfy their answer or their search intent or whatever they may be looking for, right? Like think about a recipe. When you search a recipe, you probably don't care about the backstory of the first time this person ever made the recipe or learned it from someone, right? You just want to see the recipe, right? So you need to optimize for things like that. Get to the point, all right? SEO content writing, third takeaway here, SEO content writing is as much of an art as it is a science. There are frameworks and guidelines to follow, obviously, in terms of include your keyword in your H2s and 3s, and like I said, use bullet points, white space, all those different things. Obviously, those are all important. But at the end of the day, you're writing for people, and obviously for search engines a bit as well, but you should not be writing like a robot. In the space, I work in e-commerce, that's where our agency works, and all the brands we work with obviously are direct to consumer, right? We are writing for people in our space. That is plain and simple, the end of the discussion there. So if your content looks like it's optimized only for search engines, it's going not to perform well, okay? We need to be optimizing for people, all right? Especially in the e-com space. Right, like you're having a conversation with a person. Again, if you are translating complex topics into very simple, easy to read sentences and paragraphs, you should be doing that already. Like you should be writing like you were talking to someone. It should be very casual. Again, this is strictly in the e-com space. If you work in, the SaaS space or, like any startup or Fortune 5, yeah, you're probably going to use a little bit more complex language. That's okay. Again, this is directed exclusively for my e-commerce writers, okay? So in the case of e-commerce, write like you're talking to someone, ideally your target consumer. All right, what to expect. You're not going to be great at SEO writing right away. That's okay. If you've done academic writing, or you've done like ad copy or direct response or whatever, right? Obviously you've got some writing skills, but they don't directly translate over to SEO in most cases. All right. Your first few drafts, if you're writing for someone, they're going to probably have a bunch of revisions and suggestions. Okay, like my writers are going to get a lot of revisions and suggestions very early on in their career, and then as they progress, they're going to have less as they learn. Right? If you're writing for yourself, the edits are going to be on you. Like if you're building a niche site or you're starting your own e-commerce brand, it's going to be up to you to do revisions and suggestions. That's unfortunately the case. And then in 6 months, if you're still writing, I hope, you're going to look back at your first draft you ever wrote in SEO and be like, wow, that was not great, but look how much I've grown now, okay? If you're writing for someone, don't take the edits and revisions personally. Simply, SEO content writing exists so that people, yourself included, myself included, brands included, agencies included, so they can make more money. That is the only reason your writing exists, okay? There is nothing personal about it. The feedback on your writing is purely objective as it relates to making more money, okay? That is it, all right? So don't take things personally. If you look back in 3 months and you're like, man, I've not really gone anywhere. Well, you just need to get better. It's simple as that, okay? Second thing, as complex as it may seem, everything into SEO can be separated into one of 3 things: technical, on-page, and off-page. Obviously, technical covers things, like indexing, page speed, 404 errors, indexability issues, things like that. On-page is obviously anything along the lines of like keyword research, blog writing, on-page optimization for like product pages, collection pages, things like that. And then off page is obviously like link building, right? Like backlink building. So in terms of content writing, you fit obviously into the on page bucket of the three. Okay. If you are really great at content writing, and you are not great at technical and off page SEO, there's still a place for you in SEO, but just keep in mind, like, your writing only works if the other two parts also work. And those other two parts only work if your part also works. Okay. So it's a very holistic discipline, right? If you're doing it all on yourself, like doing it all on your own, whether it's building your own brand or, you're trying to build a niche site, right? Like, you have to get all of the parts right. You can't just be exceptional at writing and just ignore off-page and technical SEO. You will never do well. And again, if you're excellent at technical SEO, but you can't write or build links, again, it won't matter. You need to be, if you're doing it for yourself, you need to be pretty good at all three of them. If you're doing it for an agency or, a website or a brand, like a big brand, and you're just specializing in writing or just in technical SEO or just in link building, obviously, go down the rabbit hole of that specialty. All right. Third point, it's not like academic writing at all. I know a lot of people, college kids, even high school kids, getting into freelance writing. That's great. But unfortunately for SEO, like, you need to unlearn everything that your high school and college English or literature professors told you. That kind of writing does not work in the SERPs, right? The sentences are long and complex. There's way too much fluff. Like, in SEO writing, you just have to get to the point. Like, yes, average content length will probably be in the realm of like 1,000 to 2,000 words across the average, like, top of funnel, middle of funnel SERP. But that just means you need to provide more value. It doesn't mean you need to write longer sentences and add fluff. Like, that's not going to help you rank ever. Okay. Again, on the same side, it's not a creative free-for-all. Okay. We don't need a ton of adjectives and a ton of imagery. It is a waste of space, right? You don't need to litter your writing with a ton of adjectives to make people feel good. Okay. That is not going to work in SERPs. Okay. If you're writing email copy, or, maybe ad copy, yeah, maybe that works there. But in SEO, that kind of stuff does not fly, all right? I mentioned this earlier. The average American reads at a 7th to 8th grade level, according to the Literacy Project, okay? Unfortunately, obviously this is low, especially if you're above that level. If you're above that reading level or that age level, obviously you probably read at a higher level than 7th and 8th grade. But unfortunately, that is who we're writing for the average or the lowest common denominator in this case, okay? What that means for you, in order to make your knowledge of a complex topic readable, it needs to be short sentences, simple words, and 100% clarity, okay? That is it. We do use AI at our agency, and I encourage you to use it. If you're learning how to write, it is going to expedite your learning and growth process tremendously, okay? It is not as simple as copy and pasting ChatGPT prompts and then copy and pasting the output into a blog. That does not fly. If you do it, you might get lucky. Like, if you end up on page 1, you probably got lucky. I know people building AI sites. There's a reason they're building 100 sites at once, and that is simply because AI is not good enough to fully invest in one brand and put all of your faith in AI to build out powerful blog content for one brand. So they build out 100 essentially to spread out their deck, and hopefully, they get a hit, right? So, like I said, these tools are far from perfect. For my writers, if they send me a draft and it's ChatGPT based, I can tell right away. I've read enough of that kind of content. I know what it looks like, and I know what their style looks like in comparison to it. No questions asked. I will fire them if they use AI copy pasted content. All right, we're writing for brands. That's it, right? Brands would not be paying us to copy and paste ChatGPT content. They could do that on their own. There's absolutely no point in us doing it or them paying us. And again, if we were to do that, we wouldn't get any results anyway, so they would stop paying us in the future, okay? But these tools help you make money. I'm going to show you later on how to use them effectively, okay? Again, how long is this going to take? Like I said, I'm self-taught. I probably delayed my learning process by like 6 to 12 months simply because I was just reading a bunch of theory, never testing on my own websites or anything like that. It took me a couple of years before everything finally started to click. Again, longer than I would have liked. I want to accelerate that process. Writing, once I figured out how the pieces work together, writing clicked quickly for me. But again, I think you can become an excellent writer in 3 to 4 months, very likely much sooner. If you've got any form of writing experience, even academic or like direct response or ad copy, you've got some writing principles and the psychology kind of like all wrapped up, right? And you just have to, switch the principles or modify them a little bit to fit SEO, okay? So again, I think you can take much less time. Content examples, again, these are redacted. Our writers that I'm training obviously have these for the brands we work with, but we'll not be posting those on YouTube simply for privacy reasons for our clients. Tools we use. So this is one I've been using lately, Swift Brief, powered by OpenAI. I actually don't think it's powered by OpenAI anymore, but pretty much it's an AI generated or AI brief generator. Okay, you set up your brand, you pretty much like input your topic, and it spits you out a brief. It essentially scrapes data from the top 10 search results, gives you average word count, semantic keywords to use, pretty solid brief structure, a bunch of other things, right? So use that. We're using that at our agency currently. Google Docs is what we draft in. OpenAI, ChatGPT, again, I'll show you how to use that later on. Grammarly, free Chrome plugin. Literally, if you're writing anything, you should have Grammarly. It is a no-brainer. It's free, and it flags spelling errors. Like, there's no excuse not to have it. Hemingway, we're going to use this later on. If you've written enough, you probably know Hemingway is kind of a pain to use. But for newer writers, I would definitely recommend using it. It'll help you kind of simplify your writing over the course of time, okay? So, the writing process, high-level stuff here. Keyword and topic research, right? When we bring on a new brand, essentially what I do is we build out the content clusters and the content calendar, and then we get to writing, okay? So topic research and brief creation comes after we've obviously identified the clusters we're going to build, when we're going to build them, things like that. Then there's the drafting step, editing step, and publishing, finally, right? For our writers, the biggest concern is step 3. However, if you understand how all the pieces work together, you're going to grow much faster as a writer. It's kind of in the same way of like I recommended the SEO 101 course from Maz earlier on. If you understand how all the parts work together, writing is going to be very simple. If you silo yourself off to just learn SEO writing, you're probably going to struggle compared to someone in your spot who knows more about technical and also off-page stuff, okay? So, I encourage writers to ask me as many questions as they possibly can think of when it comes to writing, okay? For me, selfishly, it makes our agency better. It makes them a better writer. It helps us make more money. It helps the brands make more money. It's really a win for everyone. Okay, so if you're writing for someone, whether it's like your freelance project or whatever, right? You should ask questions as long as they've given you obviously permission to do so. If they haven't, well, that's obviously a tricky spot. But ultimately, if you're learning, you need to ask as many questions as you can. That way, you can soak up more information. You can get better, and you can essentially shorten the learning curve and get better faster. Okay, so here's how it works. We onboard a new brand. All of our developers and technical SEOs get to work on fixing errors, putting the website in the best possible position to succeed from a technical standpoint. Okay. In the background, I'm building the on and off page strategy, keyword research, link building, clustering, things like that. Okay. I put together a content calendar for the next 6 months. It's pretty agile. If you're scheduling out content for the next 6 months, like you're probably in a bad spot in SEO anyway. But it's kind of just like a template, like that I can kind of reference, the client can reference, and they kind of know what's coming down the pipeline. Okay. There's been a lot of changes in Google, so very often, like it's very common that we'll change our content calendar. Like we'll move pieces around to accelerate the cluster growth or whatever the case may be. So that's how it works. If you're just writing like for an agency, or whether you're doing it for your own brand, or you're building a niche site or whatever the case may be, you've probably got an idea of what's coming down the pipeline. Like I'm finishing this blog, and then I've got this one, and then the next one, or whatever. That's enough, honestly. If you work for an agency or you're freelancing, you're probably using a PM tool of some kind. That's good. I mean, I recommend it. Even if you're doing it for your own brand and you're planning to really scale content creation, a PM tool would probably be advised. So when we set the calendar, we pretty much build briefs for the next 2 to 4 weeks. It's very uncommon that we'll change the order of the content calendar within that time frame. Like I said, we build out 6 months in advance, but I'm not going to build briefs for 6 months if we may rearrange or delete or add pieces in. So pretty much we create briefs about once a month, maybe twice a month, depending. So that's it. So pretty much what it works is we build the brief in Swift Brief. I go and make edits on the brief if need be, and then I pass it over to the writer. Right? So that's where they come in. We use Google Docs essentially to make edits and revisions. So they send me a first draft. I take a look at it, and I use the suggesting tool and the commenting tool essentially to make edits back to them. Now, if they were to send me a draft and I would just make the comments and edits and suggestions on my own and then just send it over to the client for approval, they would never learn anything. They would continue to make the same mistakes. They'd never fix anything. They'd probably get careless over time because he's just going to fix it, right? Like, why should I try harder if he's going to fix it? That's not effective, okay? So they draft it. I make comments, edits, suggestions, whatever. I send it back to them. I let them know in Slack, hey, got to go fix these things. Pretty much what I do is I make a suggestion, and under that I comment why I made the suggestion. So maybe it's maybe it's brand style. Like they don't like to use this word. like we're working with a brand right now, they don't like to use the word designer. They're a fashion brand, okay? So the writer used the word designer, and I was like, can't take this out, or you have to take this out, find another word. The brand doesn't use that, make a mental note, okay? Sometimes it's a long sentence. I'm like, all right, break this into 2 thoughts, or maybe it's repetitive. I'm like, all right, well, you just said the same thing 2 sentences ago. So like, you either need to delete this one or delete the first one, or find a way to combine them. But you've got to, like, you can't say the same thing twice so close together. All right. They go make edits, fix all the suggestions, all those things. They send it back to me. I'll take another pass at it. Typically, we catch all the suggestions in the first round. If there's anything more, obviously the second round of revisions. But if not, then I take a look at it again, send it over to the client. Then the client takes a look, gets back to me. If there's any suggestions from the client or whatever, I'll send it back to the writer. Those get implemented back to me, and then pretty much good to go. All right, and then we publish, okay? So that's that. Now, the writing process specifically. So the first 60 to 90 days of your writing career, especially if you've never done SEO, this is the process I would recommend following, and this is the process that I pretty much tell our writers they need to follow, okay? If you just start writing blindly, no guidance, no direction, whatever you want to call it, it's going to take forever to learn. Like, you're not going to learn anything for like 3 months, and you're going to look up and be like, oh my God, what have I done for the last 3 months? Well, nothing, okay? So this is essentially how it works at high level, right? So get the brief, I send it over to them, they make edits. So let's get into the research phase, because I already covered this more or less, okay? And I'll attach this document on YouTube or in the description. So if you want to take a look at it, if you're an agency owner or you're managing a content team, you can take a look at it. Feel free to steal the process at a high level. All right. Anyway, so research phase. So before you start writing, you have got to do research. It is probably the most important part of writing. Honestly, I would say it's more important than actually typing words onto a Google Doc. Like, doing the research, you have to know what you're writing about before you actually start writing. Okay. So on the briefs, we attach the top 10 SERP results for whatever keyword or topic we're targeting. I tell our writers to read through the top 3, top to bottom. Read the whole thing. Skim the bottom 7. All right. What you should be doing in this is obviously familiarize. If you're not like wildly familiar with the topic or very knowledgeable about it, reading the top 3 front to back will give you at least like a working man's knowledge of kind of what's going on, what the topic's about, things like that. Then reading the other 7, you should just skim those, because in the top 3, you should have comprehensively learned most of the things there, like 98% of what you're going to learn. So skim the bottom 7. What you're looking for when you skim and then also reading is essentially the layout. So you want to know, is it a listicle? What kind of headings, subheadings are they using? Like if something was mentioned once or twice or 3 times, like, yeah, I should obviously probably mention it in mine. Clearly it's important. Okay. So in the brief, I give our writers, it has, H2s and H3s and H4s already labeled, what information needs to be covered, things like that. I leave it up to the writers to essentially find any gaps that I missed, and pretty much just like obviously turn the brief and bullet points into readable content. Okay. So if you see the same piece of information more than once, so if you see it like in the number 1 result and also the number 2 result, clearly it's important. If it wasn't in the brief, you should obviously add it to the brief. That way it gets put in the piece of content. Okay. Just jot down a small note in the relevant section of the brief and come back to it later on when you're ready to draft. All right. Again, read the top 3 in their entirety, so you can get a feel for it. You can get a feel for the style, what they're talking about, the topic, all those good things. Okay. To accelerate the note-taking aspect, though, I found this to be a pretty handy trick. So this is a prompt we use. So pretty much what you'll do is copy this prompt into ChatGPT. Don't hit enter yet, and then just copy and paste the content from the entire, like, this is the number 1 result, this is the number 2 result, this is the number 3 result, okay? I don't know what ChatGPT's content or character input limit is. My guess is you'll probably only be able to do 1 article at a time. So what you'll need to do is just obviously adjust you'll just have to do, like, paste this in, say, here's article 1, hit enter. Here's article 2, hit enter. Here's article 3, hit enter. Obviously, copy paste the full article content in there. And then just tell ChatGPT to highlight the differences of the last 3 outputs, right? The content gaps, and obviously just produce the best piece of content for Google, okay? So that's that. The goal is to essentially exploit the content gaps and opportunities. It can help you, like, if you're reading it quickly and you didn't see something that was mentioned a few times, like, ChatGPT will find it, right? And if there's anything like ChatGPT knows that, like, maybe the main results didn't cover, it'll find those too, right? So that's a good thing. Yeah, so if you're writing from academic writing, we don't use in-text citations. We don't use like end of content citations, like nothing like that. All right. We just use external links. If you read through the SEO 101 or the on-page optimization, I think off the top of my head, it tells you that you should externally link to other pages. That's true. You shouldn't do it a lot. Obviously, I mean, the more links you can build to your own site is better. But in certain cases, you definitely want to build external links. So here are kind of my rules of thumbs. We work with a few health and fitness brands. If we work with a health and fitness or like a food and beverage brand, the only websites that we're allowed to link, that we're going to link out to, are accredited medical journals, .gov sites, or like highly accredited websites, like maybe Healthline, like maybe. Only because those sites are credible, right? You don't want, and yeah, you don't want, like, you only want to link to credible sites because that essentially like re-endorses your credibility and trust through Google, right? You should never link to a brand or SERP competitor. So obviously, like if you're building a brand, or like we work with e-commerce brands, we're never going to build a link to another competitor because that would be insane and would hurt us. Okay. Same thing with a SERP competitor, right? I've seen new writers, we're writing about a certain topic, and they go Google that topic, and they're like, oh, I need to cite this piece of information. Okay. Well, they're like, oh, this blog is right here, and it's got valuable information that I need, so let me just cite it. Well, that blog is already in like number 1 or 2 spot of the SERP we're already trying to compete on. So you definitely don't want to link to a competing result in the same SERP. So always avoid that at all costs. If it's a general statistic that's widely known, you don't need to cite it, right? Like the ocean covers 71% of Earth's surface. You can just say the ocean covers over 70% of the Earth's surface. You don't need to be so super exact, right? Now, you're citing like a statistic about medicine or, like the economy or anything like that, like super technical stuff, 100% you should cite it all the time. Like that just adds to your credibility. That's the way to go. But if it's like a more general thing, don't bother. Again, want to build more internal links than external links. So limit your external links only to the most essential ones. I'd say no more than like 2 to 3, like per 1,500 word blog. Obviously, like there are some blogs we write that don't have any. That's fine too. It's just it's a rule of thumb. It really depends on what you're writing about and who you're writing it for. And as far as internal links, I wouldn't say there's an upper limit on those, but the more you build, the more diluted they get in terms of like the amount of authority a certain link passes. So like if you build like, let's say 2 links per 1,000 words, like those 2 links are going to theoretically carry more weight than if you build like 15 internal links. So you need to get your clustering right, like which other pieces of content on my website are actually valuable and could help the reader improve on their knowledge that are also related to this blog, right? So that's really what it comes down to. Again, you just need to say, okay, is this valuable? Is this important? Is it actually going to help the reader? If it's not, don't put the link. Like it's that simple, okay? All right, drafting. So naturally, the introduction paragraph is the first thing anyone reads, including a searcher, okay? You might be inclined to start there. I will tell you right now, that should be the last thing you write. The introduction paragraph should be absolutely the last thing you write. The second to last thing should be your conclusion paragraph, all right? So what you're going to do actually is start with the first H2. So you are going to copy the prompt from the section of the brief. Now, you guys obviously don't have the briefs that I give my writers, so you're going to have to essentially, basically you need to turn your bullet points into a sentence, right? So like, describe how bullet point A and bullet point B are related to, X, Y, and Z, okay? And just copy that into ChatGPT and don't hit enter, okay? Then what you're gonna do after that is essentially paste your notes in there and say, hey, ChatGPT, also reference these notes that I've already taken and fill in any gaps that I may have missed, all right? I'll show you the full prompt later on. I already said I was pretty openly against pure AI content or 100% AI content. We don't use AI generated content. I mean, it's that simple. The reason we use AI is to accelerate writing and growth and results, okay? If you think back to high school, I literally wrote it down here, okay? So we pretty much brain dump ChatGPT content into the briefs, and then we use our writers to edit it, okay? Think back to high school or college when you had to write a paper, like, I don't know, a 10-page paper seemed like the end of the world in high school or college, right? I could write 10 pages in like a handful of hours now because I've been writing for so long, okay? But back in high school and college, I would look at a blank page and just have no idea where to start, right? I think I skipped like every brief creation process ever in high school and college, which I obviously regret now, knowing how much it helps me. But I'd start a blank page for like 30 minutes just wondering where to start, right? Like I'd always start with the intro or the thesis, and that would never get me anywhere. Then I'd just like be making stuff up on the fly. I wish I had AI, obviously, back in those days to essentially break me out of the writer's block. So that's what we use AI for, right? We just brain dump stuff, edit it, and go from there, right? It's so much easier to look at some writing or output from AI and be like, oh my God, that is terrible. We need to fix that. It's so much easier to do that than just look at a blank piece of paper and wonder, what on earth am I going to start writing with? Okay, so that's how we use AI, all right? So essentially, after you've copy and pasted the per section brief in ChatGPT and you've not yet hit enter, you will then copy and paste this prompt directly into it. Just this one. So limit your output to X number of words and write in a manner that is clear, concise, and easy to understand. Only mention the most essential information like. Then you can insert your bullet points from the section, separated by commas, and any other important information that a reader might deem relevant. Okay. Depending on like your brief output, like how many sections you have, how long the blog actually needs to be, I use like 150 to 200 is like kind of the default word count. It's not perfect, right? Like the AI output, like 20% of what you get is actually going to be good. I think all the words are generally, and the concepts are all going to be there. They're just not in the right spot and they're not phrased the right way. But like I said, you'll end up trimming a good amount of content. Okay. So hit enter on ChatGPT, then grab the output, paste it into your brief. Okay. Like I said, 20 to 30% of the output will be completely fluff or irrelevant. You're going to cut that out right off the bat. All right. You'll know when you read it, it sucks. Like it's passive voice. It's way too long and drawn out. Like ChatGPT is just trying to fill in your word count. Okay. It's super irrelevant. Just get rid of it. Okay. Even if you tell it to, fill in the notes you gave it, it might omit them. Okay. So fill in the gaps. Right. Again, just to reiterate, it is a tool. It's not a crutch. Okay. ChatGPT is not going to automatically make you an excellent writer. There are still multiple human touch points on the content. Okay. There's a reason that people are skeptical of AI content, myself included. It's because it has no voice. We write for e-commerce brands who are very passionate about their brand, the voice they convey, and how they come off to their customers. Okay. And computer is literally just generating words. That is all it does. It has no passion, emotion, or sentiment. Okay. So that is where the human touch comes in. Okay. Especially in the e-com space, your writing absolutely needs to be 100% human focused and human centric. Okay. Again, I said it earlier. I will say it again. D2C brands don't need AI produced content. They can do that on their own. And I will know within seconds of reading it if it's AI produced. Okay. I have a zero tolerance policy. And I think actually so do our brands. We've never really explicitly spoken about it. But I know for a fact I would never hand over a draft to one of the brands we work with and in full confidence, I'm like, yeah, this is our best work. And it's just AI copy paste. Like that would be garbage. Okay. So human centric touch all the time. Okay. Again, from the AI output, you'll have to reorder sentences, shorten them into 2. AI may write in passive voice. That's pretty common. I tend to prefer active voice, especially in the e-com space. So that's just like a preference thing. Again, you'll have to make all those edits after the prompt after you've outputted the prompt, right? Find simpler way to say complex things, okay? Pretty straightforward, but get rid of words like very, a lot, really, totally, completely. They're fluff. They take up space and they don't impact your copy whatsoever in terms of search, okay? Don't keyword stuff. Again, if you're knowledgeable about the topic, it should be pretty natural reference anyway. If you're not knowledgeable and you've read the top 3 SERPs, again, like just don't think about mentioning it all the time. It doesn't need to be in every single paragraph and every single subheading. It needs to be in a good amount of them, right? So don't overthink this, right? If you let's see, keyword, you use your keyword in the first sentence of an H2 paragraph, right? And in the next sentence, you need to say it again, but you don't want to say it again because that would just look bad, right? You can still just say it or they or them or whatever the keyword, however the pronoun would be referenced properly to that keyword, right? So that's that. Big takeaways. Finally, you need to produce helpful, valuable content. Okay. After you've drafted everything, you need to reread it, and I would read it out loud. Okay. And if you can barely understand it, there's no way other people who didn't even write it are going to be able to understand it. All right. So you have to fix whatever. Maybe it's a whole paragraph. Maybe it's one sentence. Whatever. Rewrite it. Put yourself in the searcher's shoes and ask yourself, does this clearly answer my question? Right. If I searched for, what is the best protein powder for building muscle, right? And you try to target that keyword and you wrote a blog and let's say, I mean, maybe let's say I made it to page 1 and I read it and I read the whole thing and I have no idea where I stand. I still don't even know what the best protein powder is for building muscle. Like, it's not a good piece of content, right? It's that simple. Put yourself in the searcher's shoes and see, after reading this, am I more knowledgeable and is my search intent satisfied? Yes or no? Okay. Again, this is purely applicable to e-commerce. We are writing for people and brands, not for search engines. Okay. Yes, there are definitely like very tricky ways, like, you know, small tips and tricks or whatever you want to call them, to write that is fully optimized for search engines. But at the end of the day, we're selling direct to consumer. All right. So that is what we're writing for, is the consumer ultimately. Don't sound like a robot. Have some personality. A good reference point I use for our writers is like 90-10. So 90% information and value, 10% brand and personality. Okay. So whenever we bring on a new brand, we'll read through some of their brand's existing content, you know, whether it's blog content, maybe even email content sometimes, just to like get a feel for their style. Find a way to subtly integrate, you know, certain words they use, like high affinity terms, you know, they want to be associated with, and like low affinity terms, like they absolutely do not want to be, you know, associated with. I mentioned the fashion brand earlier. They hate the word designer. Okay. So that's a low affinity term we're clearly never going to use in our writing, ever. Okay. On the other hand, they like to use the word affordable. So we're going to use that word a ton. Okay. So simple things like that. For our writers and the blog content, and most blog content really, most of your content is going to be aimed at customers at the middle and the top of the funnel. On top of satisfying their search intent, you are attempting to move them closer to the bottom of the funnel. Okay. Yes, you want to rank in the number 1 spot, but once you're in the number 1 spot and someone reads your blog, you don't just want them to read your blog and then leave. You want to sell them something. That is the whole point of writing content. Unless you're running a niche site and you just want to get display ad revenue, like if you're running an e-commerce brand or you're running an agency or whatever, you are looking to sell something, right? You can't be overtly salesy in SEO copy. Use calls to actions, you know, use product images, lifestyle images, things like that. But be persuasive, right? Like push them. If they start at the top of the funnel, push them down to the middle of the funnel, at least the next stage, right? Present the facts and frame them in a way that moves the person to the next stage of the funnel, okay? Again, if they read your blog and bounce, it probably wasn't good enough, honestly. Like, that is just the long and short of it, all right? So if you have any questions, drop them in the comments and I'll get back to them. And if you want the full document, it's also in the description. And it's also on my Twitter. I think it's my pinned tweet right now. So give me a follow, subscribe, whatever you want to do. If you have any questions, like I said, drop them in the comments. All right, later.